Welcome everyone to Gurukul Online Learning Network. Today we are covering the topic Introduction to English Debating, and we are going in depth into characterization. I am Aian Adib, and without further ado, let's get started. Now, as mentioned before, characterization is a very important part of debate, primarily on the Prime Minister and the Leader of Opposition. They have the burden to set the characterization of the debate and show where and how the debate will play out. Now, remember, characterization determines how the rest of the debate will play out. So, this is very important. You need to think about what you can characterize the debate on and how you will go about playing it. Remember, characterization can play to your advantage and to your opposition's advantage as well. So, you need to characterize it to the extent that your arguments will be relevant, but it won't frame the opposition's argument out to the point where you're strawmanning or squirreling. I will talk about strawmanning or squirreling in a moment, but for now, remember that your characterization needs to be a little broad, but should play to your advantages. So, characterize it such that your arguments will be much more relevant, yet the opposition's argument and their debate will be subtly framed out. So, that is an art in itself, and you should see how it works by looking at past debates. But we will cover that also in a later session. Now, there are mainly three types of motions to which you will characterize. Now, first of all, an open motion. What do we mean by this? The example here is this house will eat a sandwich. Now, how are you going to go about debating on this? Now, there are many ways to characterize this motion. You can come up and say that this house will eat a sandwich because they don't like hamburger. Now, this is one of the ways to go about this motion. Or you could come up and say that this house will eat a sandwich because they don't like vegetables. Or this house will eat a sandwich that is vegetarian because the house doesn't like the meat industry. Now, there are several ways to go about this motion, and that is why this is such an open motion. You cannot get a grasp on what exactly this motion wants from you. That is why this is an open motion. You can come up and give your own characterization to it, but the opposition can also come up and give their own characterization to it. Now, which characterization will win? The one which the edge thinks is the most important, or you prove which one is more important. So remember, as mentioned before, do not let an edge think for themselves. Show them why it's important and why it should be taken into account. So if you can give them a characterization that is important and your arguments prove that your characterization is important, and you show why after linking back your characterization is important, your characterization will be the one that wins. And contrary to that, if the opposition comes up and gives a characterization that is much better than yours, the oppositions will win. So remember, open motions aren't actually that common because it is so open, people generally don't know what to debate about. And this is a bad type of motion in general because it does not hit any kind of place in which you should come up, characterize the motion and debate on it. It's just something that we make fun of or have a conversation on while we're having tea in some places, or just a fun motion we talk about and have fun on while we're chatting with our friends and such. So typically during actual debates, this kind of motion won't come. So what will come? The other two are more important. So remember, open motions, you can characterize it to your advantage or the opposition can characterize it to their advantage. But remember to have a certain place in which you win. And if it does come, I hope you can tackle it. Now, second, the semi-open motion. This is much more common. Now, for the example, this house will bring China to court. Now, you need to know who are we talking about? Who is this house? Who has the power to bring China to court? Obviously, the International Jurisdiction Committee. So, UN UN can bring China to court. Who else can bring China to court? You need to think about that and think why they need to bring China to court. And if you're going to talk about like America, you can talk about the death traps that China is setting on Sri Lanka or Pakistan and saying that America will bring China to court. Or with the same notion, you can come up and say that the UN committee will bring China to court for this, or for the Uyghur massacre that is going on in China. You can talk about this and bring it to court from the UN's perspective or America's perspective, or whichever one you prefer. Or it could even be Sri Lanka going against China or India going against China. So remember, which one will be the best to your argument? You need to pick that. Which characterization is the best to the arguments that you can present? Remember, your arguments are the biggest priority, and after that you need to think about which one will the arguments make sure that the characterization comes to full fruition. So if you're going to talk about India's reason as to why they should bring China to court, you should characterize the motion such that India is this house and they will bring China to court on this reason. Or if you're thinking from America's perspective, you can talk about why America will bring China to court, for which reason, that reason that you're going to prove in your arguments. Or you could even bring up UN and say why UN will bring China to court due to the fact that the Uyghur massacre that is happening, or another reason that you think will be much more important to prove your argument. So semi-open motions are quite common, and you can see them much more in BP because this has a lot of perspective and what to talk about. You can see the already diverse notion in which we can go, and you can see that every single team may talk about a different type of reason why China will be brought to court and why that is important. So in the end, the one which can prove the argumentations are the most important to their characterization and the most important to the debate will win. That is why I always say linking back is the most important. Show why the fact that you're talking about is the most important and will in the end show why the motion goes to your side. And the edge thinks that because you've proven why you're important enough to be thought of, why you're important enough to be winning this debate. Now, third of all, you can see this a lot. Closed motion. This house supports Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. Now, look at this motion for a while. You can see that this is not necessarily an actor motion. This is more of what the house values. Now, who can this house be? That is for up to you to decide. But in general, you can see that there is no other way to go than just showing that why Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971 was something that they support. Now, characterizing this house is up to you, but you cannot talk about anything other than Bangladesh's liberation war. If you want to make it more specific, you can go and say that this house, as India, supports Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. Now here, you can see this turns into an actor motion. So in actor motion, it is generally closed. You cannot come up and say that, alright, we are not taking the motion into account. We are not going to talk about India. We are going to talk about Pakistan from the motion given. You cannot do that because that is completely turning the tide to the fact that you're going against the motion. You cannot talk about something that hasn't been mentioned in the motion. You need to go according to the motion, and the motion is given specifically so you can debate on it. Now, if you go against the motion, that is completely knifing the motion in the end, and you will definitely lose the debate. You cannot come up and say you're going against the motion. So talk about what is being said here. This house, yes, it still gives a little bit of leeway to come up and say that, alright, we are going to talk about from India's perspective, we are going to talk about from Russia's perspective, or we can even talk about from Pakistan's perspective. But once this is said that this house as India, Pakistan, or Russia supports Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. You cannot talk about how Turkey supports this, or you cannot also talk about any other liberation war that is done in the world, because it is specifically mentioned Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. Remember, be as far away as you can from strawmanning or squirreling. What do I mean by strawmanning or squirreling? So you can come up and, as mentioned before, you can come up and say that, all right, we are going to talk about this singular state in India. We are going to talk about why Kolkata supports the Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. That is taking the debate into such a precise context, you're not even sure how the opposition will come in and talk about it. So you're taking the debate to such a point that you're going to talk only about Kolkata. Let's take, for example, your arguments are Kolkata has gotten a lot of more Hindu residents from Bangladesh since they got out of Bangladesh and got into Kolkata to seek asylum. So this, you cannot just come up and say that, all right, this is our argument, so our characterization will be that. No, don't do that. Come up and give a general argument to it. If you're going to come up and talk about from India's perspective, talk about India's perspective, but don't go any deeper to the point where there cannot be any kind of debate. So even the example that I have given, the opposition could come up and talk about why Kolkata's intake of refugees was bad and why Kolkata shouldn't support it. But still, it's taking it to such a context that it's only about Kolkata, whereas the whole world is still lying in wait to hear about your reasons why they should support or not support the liberation war. So remember, if I take strawmanning to an extreme, that is like saying this specific person of India should support. Do not do that. Do not take the context to such an extreme that the opposition is completely framed out of the debate. That will make you lose the debate and lose the characterization. That will make you lose the arguments that you have said. Even if your arguments are very well done and very precise and are very important to the debate, you cannot just come up and say that this was the reason, whereas your opposition talks about a much broader reason as to why this should not be supported. So remember, be as far away as you can from strawmanning or squirreling. Now, what have we learned so far? We have learned how to characterize based on the motion presented. Remember the types of motion that I have given. 1. Open motion, in which you can come up and characterize whatever you want. There is no kind of limitation as to what characterization you need to do. So that is not as common in the debating circuit. Second, semi-open motion. There is a big leeway as to what can be defined here and what we are going to talk about. Like the example that I have given, you can talk about any country there. You can talk about why they will bring China to court. That is another topic to talk about. And in closed motion, you can only talk about what the motion has given to you to talk about. So remember these three motions and how to characterize them. And remember, do not strawman or squirrel, as that will definitely lead you to losing the debate and losing all the hard work that you have put in your prep time and to win. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, share it with your friends, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comment box below.